All right, everyone. We will go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you so much again for joining us today. We've got a great panel and we've got great partners here. So thanks to you guys also. Before we just get started, I just want to remind everyone the purpose behind the webinar. Our intentions are to provide an opportunity for all of you to hear from industry-specific professionals about how they are logistically implementing the Tennessee Pledge guidelines, as well as other guidelines from the industry. We've asked, obviously, our presenters to be as thorough as possible in their explanations, but this webinar is not intended by any means to replace anyone's responsibility in reading through and really understanding the guidelines. So we just want to remind everyone to make sure that you understand and are operating safely. But with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Jermaine Freeman, Deputy Chief of Staff to Mayor Burke, and he's going to kick us off.
Yeah, thank you, Brooke. I appreciate the introduction. So I'm Jermaine Freeman, Deputy Chief of Staff in the Office of Mayor Andy Burke with the City of Chattanooga. And we just want to thank you for taking time out of your day to join the City of Chattanooga for our webinar today. We know that there are businesses that are opening up and restarting and have been for the past few weeks. And then there are businesses that have continued to be open sort of through the pandemic. And so today we wanted to host this webinar to bring attention to our lodging and accommodations industry. Obviously, this is an industry that's sort of been running and operating the entire time, but we know that there are people that have concerns and questions about lodging and accommodations and staying in hotels or Airbnbs or short-term vacation rentals. And so we wanted to give a panel of experts a chance to kind of speak on how the industry is keeping people safe. And so that's sort of the purpose of today's webinar. With that, I think I'll do a little bit of introductions here. We've got a great panel today to talk to us about how the industry is going to try to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And first, I really want to thank our partners over at the Chattanooga Tourism Company, including Brian Murphy, Candace Litchfield, and Steph Hayes that are, it looks like Brian and Steph are with us today on the panel. Steph, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Stephanie Hayes, the Chattanooga Tourism Company, but really we'd like to thank the panelists we've recruited for this. I've just organized, so thank you all for hosting it.
Yeah. Thank you, Steph, for all your help and for all your collaboration. And then Brian, if you want to introduce yourself, and then if you've got a few words to add in there.
Hey, Jermaine. I'm all of a sudden having internet connection issues. My name is Brian Murphy, Vice President of Business Development with Chattanooga Tourism Company. We think this is a great thing to have with the city, and really appreciate y'all having this, especially having best practices and talking. One hotel might be doing something that another one hadn't thought of, or short-term vacation rental. So it'll be good to figure that out. With all the studies and everything that we're seeing with the research, one of the main concerns that travelers are having, and the one word that we see a lot, is safety. And so that's something we definitely need to, show the travelers out there that we're taking it serious. As we know as hoteliers, we used to make sure all that was being hidden. You weren't vacuuming in front of people or wiping things down in front of guests. You did that at night. Well, now we want, our housekeepers and porters and everybody to be seen wiping things down and vacuuming things. So again, just a great day to have a webinar. And again, thank you for the city for putting this on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian and Steph. We really appreciate it. And again, thank you for helping us to put together such a great panel today. And so with that, let me introduce our panelists and give them a chance to introduce themselves. So first up, we've got Brianna Garza, who's from the short-term vacation rental industry. Brianna, do you want to give a brief introduction?
I will. Thank you for bearing with the unmuting process. Well, I'm Brianna Garza. I operate a few short-term vacation rentals in North Georgia, Chattanooga. I also teach the Intro to Airbnb course for the city that I'm really excited about. And what I do is I emphasize compliance and right now safety measures for STVRs.
All right, very good. And then next up, we've got Mr. Dennis Tumlin from the Tennessee Department of Tourist Development. Dennis, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jermaine. My name is Dennis Tumlin. I'm the Chief Customer Officer for the Tennessee Department of Tourist Development, and I work for Commissioner Mark Ezell. And Commissioner Ezell is also leading the Economic Recovery Group, which is coordinating the creation of the Tennessee Pledge guidelines that you're seeing out there. So happy to work with you guys.
All right, thank you so much, Dennis. And then last but not least, we have David Martin from Vision Hospitality Group. David, you want to introduce yourself? It looks like you're on mute.
Okay, there we go. I think I'm on now. Great.
Yeah.
Well, David Martin, Vision Hospitality. I'm the Chief Operating Officer, representing 37 hotels around the country. Proud to be here. Thank you for sponsoring this. I think it's an opportunity for all of us to tell our stories and help build confidence as people begin to engage in moving around the country and staying in hotels and other accommodations. So thank you.
All right, thank you all, and thank you once again for joining the panel today, and thank you to our viewers for tuning in. So I thought today we would just sort of have a dialogue, and so let's jump right into the questions. I'll pose a question, we'll give each of you a chance to respond, and then we'll kind of move through the questions that way. And so the first question that I have is, as you all look at the new guidelines that have come out in terms of the Tennessee Pledge around lodging and accommodations, how has that changed sort of operations overall? And I'll start with Brianna. How do you feel like the Tennessee Pledge guidelines have impacted the way people do Airbnbs and short-term vacation rentals?
Well, first I'll start with kind of the change that my role has been with short-term vacation rentals. I've now transitioned from an operations standpoint to somewhat of a teaching capacity. I am the resource for up-to-date information, and that's why I appreciate the Tennessee Pledge, because what it does is it provides reputable information from OSHA and from CDC, because if you do a Google search, you're going to find 5 to 6 different safety standards for lodging. And you want to be sure that you are using and training your staff with information that's reliable. So that's been a change in terms of my capacity, being more of a teacher and being a tool for reputable information. But we've limited accommodations, obviously. And for short-term vacation rental capacity, it was already limited. Typically, short-term vacation rentals can accommodate guests between 2 and 8, depending on the size of the location. But truly, guest sizes have been cut in half just to limit larger groups. We've extended the amount of time it takes to turn around properties. We could turn around properties in 4 hours and have them prepared for the next guest. Now we're limiting it. There's a day in between each accommodation. So there's been a lot of changes, but the one thing that I've been emphasizing is having reliable information to use.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. David, do you want to talk a little bit about how things have changed in the hotel world for you guys?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you. You know, interesting, in the hotel world, we've been cleaning since the beginning of time. And so like hospitals, the services, medical care, and hotels is overnight accommodation, but really what we do behind the screens from a functionality standpoint is clean. And so I think what this has done, and the Tennessee Pledge and the CDC and the brand work that is coming out from all over the country, is really just improving, refining those processes. We're upping our game, and I think to Dennis's point, we're now more visual than we used to be. We used to be behind the scenes doing it in the evening time when no one saw us, but now I think to build confidence, we're outwardly demonstrating, but I think we've been in the business of cleaning for a long time. So I think it's just making our industry better. We're more visual, I think, is the biggest change than prior to COVID-19.
All right, good deal. Let's see here. And then Dennis, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of comments there about the Tennessee Pledge and how it was created. It may help you there. There's about 274 people on the committees and the subcommittees. If you look at the direct economic recovery group, then there's about 14 or so subcommittees out of that leadership group. And Mitch Patel from Chattanooga is on one of those committees helping to create these guidelines. And I'll never forget what he said early, David, to your point, you just said, we've been regulated in cleaning since the beginning of time. We are already highly regulated. We clean, we know this. We're going to double down and focus on our efforts, but we have been doing these things since the creation of time. Tennessee Pledge is baked through a couple of different filters. The American Hotel and Lodging Association, the AHLA, if you want to go there, they've issued guidelines, and the Tennessee Pledge group, the ERG group, has filtered the Hospitality Association's recommendations through their lens, and then looking at the CDC lens to bake it down to what's right for Tennessee through subject matter experts such as Mitch Patel and Vision and so many other great partners, Ryman Hospitality and others across the state. And we have boiled down this resource, hope to make it simple and clean and not more laws or things that are burdensome, but to ensure employee safety and guest safety. So just want to give you that background on the Tennessee Pledge process.
All right, thank you, Dennis. I appreciate those words from each of you. And so my next question is, how are you all sort of thinking about keeping your employees safe and how to communicate all of the changes that your industry has had to make to your employees? And so, Brianna, how does that communication work with short-term vacation rental operators, and what's kind of the message that you all are wanting to make sure that you get through to the operators?
In terms of communication, we've used platforms similar to this, where we would have meetings and meet face-to-face frequently to discuss like planning and schedules, but visual mediums like Zoom and GoToMeeting have been a way to share information. I did have staff, acknowledge a document that, so they understood their requirements in this current pandemic of truly being extremely thorough in their cleaning and sanitation processes. But employee safety is paramount. I mean, I think I speak for all of us to say we can do this alone. So their health and their safety and doing frequent check-ins and being sure that before they report to any location, they're in optimal health. So we have, I've amended my policies in terms of the cleaning company's sick and illness. There are no penalties if you're not feeling well. There's no verification that's required. You do need to have a release to return, but we've loosened those requirements so that we're not cross-contaminating and putting people in harm's way.
All right, good deal. And then David, you want to talk a little bit about how you guys are communicating the safety measures to your employees?
Yeah, sure. Well, we are fortunate on a multitude of fronts in that we represent many brands, and so we have our brands that communicate constantly that we're held responsible for from a franchise or franchisee perspective. Internally, we put out communications twice a week in writing to our associates. We have a town hall every Friday, had one this morning, where we bring every employee online and we have a town hall between Mitch and myself, and we update on current trends, current procedures, the expectations, Tennessee Pledge, the brand requirements. We go into detail every week, every Friday with all of our associates. We also communicate. We have a training platform at each of the hotels that they can upload all the videos and training materials that are available, and they rotate those through on a weekly basis. So we're in constant communication, reinforcing, educating, and updating based on the current trends and the new information that keeps coming out, which has been very beneficial.
Perfect, perfect. Dennis, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, not specifically for employees. We developed the guidelines, but one thing I want to call out, the Tennessee Department of Health created a program called the Child Care Payment Assistance Program for essential workers. So in Hamilton County, there are 7 locations providing free child care right now for people that are listed as essential workers according to Executive Order number 22. Many of your staff are essential and classified as essential. And I'll mention the 7 locations right quick, but it's a partnership with the Department of Health. The Willow Street YMCA on Willow Street is offering free child care. Shelter Church on East Brainerd Road, North River YMCA, New City Fellowship on 3rd Street. The J.A. Henry Community YMCA is offering free child care. Hamilton YMCA and the Downtown YMCA are all offering free child care to essential workers during this, and that goes through about mid-August. So as you're talking to your employees and they may be struggling with that child care issue, back to talking about your employees and how you're addressing employees, here's one way that they may not be aware of this opportunity and those 7 locations. If you need more information, let me know. It's on the Tennessee Department of Health's website in each location. There's also 2 locations in Cleveland. If you have employees in Cleveland commuting down, the YMCA in Cleveland and Candies Creek School is set up as free childcare. So just want to throw that out. I wasn't sure where to plug that in, but gotta get that out.
No, childcare is always important, especially for our essential workers. So, yeah, thank you for adding that, Dennis. And so my next question is, can you all talk about the safety measures that are really being put in place right now to protect guests and to keep guests safe? And so obviously I think this is going to be more of a question for Brianna and David. Brianna, you want to start?
I will, and I won't reiterate kind of the things that we've already touched on, but from an STVR standpoint, occupancy typically comes in 2 forms. There's either owner-occupied or non-owner-occupied short-term vacation rentals. And when I am providing guidance in my course and to people that have previously taken the course is for owner-occupied short-term vacation rentals to continue DCing their services. Because truly it's about the safety of the guest and the safety of your family if you are sharing that space. So that's something I do want to emphasize for owner-occupied short-term vacation rentals. There is not a lot of guidance that's available on most popular short-term vacation rental platforms when it comes to owner-occupied rentals. And so if you're going to use the Tennessee Pledge and CDC requirements as parameters, operating within those parameters obviously is acceptable, but my recommendation in terms of keeping guests safe is to really consider not operating owner-occupied spaces.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you so much. David, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. We're putting obviously PPEs on all of our employees, sanitation stations at the entrance, front desk, elevator, business center, all the touch points. So we're putting shields. We've removed all the breakfast buffets, and we're giving complimentary grab-and-go bags so that they don't have to have any touch points between guests and/or employees. We're exercising all those types of programs to completely protect and keep both our employee and our guests safe at every touch point. Additional cleaning protocols, laundry, housekeeping, guest rooms, the pause between checkout and cleaning, giving that ample time. So we're instituting all the proper protocols to make sure everyone's safe, and we're diligent at it every day. We're working hard to validate that we're doing it. Obviously, you can say it in a memo, but that we're actually validating on a day-to-day basis that we're exercising the protocols.
So David, let me ask you a follow-up there. If I'm a hotel guest and it's been a while since I've stayed in a hotel, if I check into one of your hotels now, what's that experience going to look like as I walk in off the street? How's it going to be different from, say, if I had checked into the hotel 7 months ago?
Well, first you'll see signage at the entrance of every door talking about the additional protocols that we have in place on behalf of their safety, our employees' safety, and brand requirements. So they're very stringent about that. You'll see a sanitation station, a physical stand, or a pump at the front desk for you and on the other side for our employee. You'll see a shield that separates the guest from the employee. You'll see stamps on the floor that talk about the spatial distancing requirements, and we've placed those strategically around. You know, you enter you get to the elevator, you'll see another sanitation station so that you either push the button and you want to clean your hands. You'll see housekeeping and other services, wiping and cleaning visually, you know, in those periods in between usages of the business center and some of the other offerings that we have. So you'll see a more upfront cleaning, and then you'll see all these guidances along the way as you enter in and experience the business. And you used to focus on the touch points and the psychological, emotional touch points. Now we're doing it in kind of modifying that to demonstrate and provide confidence that they are safe during this pandemic and as they start to experience our hotels. So that's really critical for us.
And so for Brianna and David, how are you sort of communicating these changes to guests on the front end? And then I think the follow-up question to that is, how do you handle guests that may not want to be compliant with some of the new safety measures, or are you making specific asks of guests? And what if they don't want to do some of the stuff that you guys are recommending? Brianna, I'll start with you.
Well, to answer the first part, as an Airbnb or short-term vacation rental host, both of the most popular platforms allow you to engage and communicate with guests truly in a text-like capacity. Notifications go directly to the guest's cell phone, and you're able to communicate with them in real time with changes. As a host, the recommendation is that you shouldn't wait for the guests to inquire whether you're still hosting and what safety parameters you're putting in place. So what we've done on the STVR side of things is we've initiated that communication. And I think that's important to really, take the bull by its horns in terms of communication and letting them know, putting those worries at ease in terms of what we're doing from a safety standpoint. And we have the ability to communicate those items directly with the guests in real time, which has been a great benefit. In regards to a guest not being compliant, that's not something that I've experienced, but certainly there are parameters put in place that fall under the extenuating circumstance policies from both most popular STVR platforms that will allow you to DC and discontinue lodging for that guest. But prior to doing that, I would consider that the last resort. I think education is important. I think being empathetic and making sure that your guest understands and feels comfortable asking and inquiring why these things are happening, and being hospitable in your responses. But certainly discontinuing lodging would be the last resort, but it does fall within those extenuating policies for both most popular STVR platforms.
Yeah, very good. All right, David, did you want to add anything?
I think we're in a hotel space. We're really moving forward towards some mobile check-ins is one way of expediting the process and giving our clients choices. We have not only all the signage and communication. To your point, Brianna, great point. We're very empathetic and hospitable. We're not a confrontation. So it's really educating and encouraging. We haven't gotten to the point to where we're refusing service. We're really encouraging, educating, and being a part of the process versus a confrontational position. So we'll continue to do that. Again, I think as we watch as we evolve through this, we'll have more experiences to understand. And again, it's normally a very small percentage of people who don't want to comply. So it's really a very small percentage that I'm not sure, other than we'll go behind them and clean the surfaces in which they touch. That would really be the extent of it right now. But we have videos that we've created in the sales process. Our websites reflect COVID. The brand websites reflect all that information. So we're constantly communicating from the point of reservation to the reservation confirmation all the way to arrival in preparation of those guests coming into our hotel. hotels and knowing what to expect.
And
All right.
something I'd like to add, if it's okay, is, we've changed our cancellation policies. It is within that guest's right, if they choose not to participate in the safety parameters, not to stay for the reservation. And from an STVR point, there's no fee for those cancellations.
All right. Thank you for that, Brianna. And so my next question is to Dennis. Dennis, can you talk a little bit about, have you had any sort of inquiries from folks in the hotel and tourist industries about how to get access to PPE, personal protective equipment, whether it's gloves or face masks or disinfectants? And what's been that conversation like with them? And then are you all, in your organization, or do you have access to enough PPE?
Yeah, great question. Luckily, I get to do these calls for the large cities across the state. I'm on Memphis's call almost every day, and this question was very common in the beginning, where I don't have a source. So the restaurants were pretty geared up through their food service industry to get PPE through the food service suppliers, but it wasn't kind of in the normal supply chain for lodging and hospitality per se. So here's what we did. We heard that question over and over and over again. So if you go to tnpledge.com, on the main page, there's a PPE vendor directory there. As of yesterday, it had about 26 bulk PPE vendors, has pricing information, buy now information. We try to consolidate it. We're not turning any vendor away. So as yesterday, I had a new vendor out of Chattanooga making bulk hand sanitizer, wanted to be added to the list. There is no screening process. We go through, ask some questions, and there's 26 vendors on there, from face masks to bulk sanitizers. A lot of the distilleries have converted over and making bulk sanitizer, and I'm looking at some of the pricing on those sanitizers. They seem to be doing a pretty good job for large bulk sanitizers. So we heard the question over and over again, and we just made a clearinghouse on tnpledge.com.
Oh, that's great. And so let me ask you a follow-up, Dennis. With you mentioned that most of the suppliers may be able to provide PPE supplies in bulk. If Brianna's got, some short-term vacation rental operators that need much smaller quantities, are they able to access those quantities through that same clearinghouse that you created?
Absolutely. So the different vendors are specified how they like to sell. Some are selling in dozens. You can buy a box of a dozen, a box of a pallet. So on that website, we did break it all the way down into small quantities. There's even hand sanitizer listed by the bottle for $2.99. My wife goes to Publix the other day and come home and says, hey, the big bottle is X. And I go right to the website and I jump online and I order from one of our distillery partners. And 2 days later, UPS has it on my front door, and I have a case of hand sanitizer, very affordable. And my wife was like, hey, man, you're a hero. So no, it's a pretty cool site, but it is from the small quantities to the doggone pallet load and truckload if you want it.
All right, very good. And so just as a follow-up to that, for Brianna, have you had any conversations or heard from short-term vacation rental operators who may be confused about how to access PPE, or do you feel like a lot of the operators that you've talked to seem to know where to source those supplies from?
From kind of outside of the short-term vacation rentals that I operate, simply because we kind of had supplies by limiting the amount of cleaners in each space at a time. We've been able to kind of limit the amount of PPE that's used. So we've been kind of rationing it at sorts. But for other inquiries that I've gotten, and it has really been helpful, is using the Facebook community to be kind of a resource for information. And for Chattanooga, the community has shown up. A lot of vendors have pivoted and now supply PPE, face masks, gloves, not necessarily gloves, but hand sanitizers and items for sure. So personally, I haven't had the crunch because of supplies and different parameters I put in place so that they're not, those resources aren't being needing to be replenished. But Lass and Lyons, is a local vodka company that's making sanitizer now, and just utilizing companies locally that have pivoted and are now supplying resources and access as something that I've seen online.
Good deal. And David, have you all had any sort of issues accessing PPE for your hotels?
Initially, I think like everyone else, it was a scramble. It's like trying to find toilet paper in Costco. It just doesn't happen. So initially, we had challenges. We ended up buying in bulk and then distributing amongst at 37 hotels around the country. It was easier to get bulk than to get the shipments and have so many new customers come to bear. So that was our initial response, but we found that the supply chain is now cleaned up and there's plenty of supplies and we're not having any back orders, except for some of the equipment, i.e. like stands that we're ordering. That's more has to be manufactured, but I think the other items are now readily available.
Very good, very good. And so this question is really more for David and Dennis. What are your plans for large groups and events? I know that with hotels, obviously part of the revenue that hotels traditionally rely on is, big either corporate bookings or the rental of big conference rooms and event spaces. And Dennis, how are you all sort of working through that as well in terms of just having conversations about large events and event bookings? David, I'll start
there, David, if I could. I got that question this week from an operator, and it's a little bit of a gray area. So Executive Order 38 last week enlarged social, how is the wording? Social and recreational gatherings for up to 50 people. So someone says, hey, I've got a large conference room. The normal capacity is 200. I'm reading another guideline that says that meeting spaces can go up to 50%. The clarification from the ERG group was a hotel operator. They have a space. They can hold a meeting up to 50% of the published occupancy of that room and still fall within the guidelines. It's a little bit gray. I did get a direct email from the ERG this week for that person who asked the question. So it's about 50% of the occupancy, still have to practice social distancing inside that room, 6 feet apart. So that was the guidance that I received from the ERG group this week on those functions.
And just as a follow-up to that, Dennis, would you recommend that people wear face masks in settings like that, or gloves or anything like that?
The recommendation is pretty much wear a face mask in those settings. That's correct. Unless you're outside in free vented areas, but in those meeting rooms and so forth, the recommendation is definitely from the ERG group, and there's doctors on this ERG group, and they're following a lot of national guidelines, but the face masks are part of the recommendations.
All right. David, did you want to follow up or add anything?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is at the current moment, there is not a glut of corporate business incentive travel that's taking place. I think we're seeing many corporations have at least temporarily postponed travel. So there's not a glut of that in the moment. So I think we'll be able to manage through. So all those guidelines that Dennis just mentioned, he's spot on. That's what we've communicated to our team. So that's right now. I don't think it's as pressing, other than we need to understand how to work within the confines of keeping everyone safe.
Absolutely. And so my next question is really directed at all of you. What's been just the biggest challenge in terms of the new safety standards that you all are facing in your organizations and in your operations? What do you find, and you can just sort of look at all of this comprehensively from the time guests show up to the time they leave, or the cleaning in between. What's been the biggest sort of adjustment that you've had to make, just in terms of your operation or in terms of of the culture? Brianna, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to David.
If you don't mind, I think I'm going to toss that question to David first.
Yeah.
Well, the biggest challenges initially was was the supply chain issues and getting the supplies. I think all of our staff and associates, had completely embraced taking the next level of what we're doing. I think the challenge isn't and I've noticed throughout all of Chattanooga as I've traveled around, I think all the businesses have responded at the highest level. I'm very proud of what I'm seeing on a day-to-day basis. So hats off to all the businesses that are reopening. The challenge is, which you posed earlier, it's the people traveling that have been pent up in their homes that throwing all the social distancing out the window. So I think the challenge is making sure we can maintain that throughout the day. I think the operations, the businesses are doing a phenomenal job. And I think we continue to project that. But it's really, when you're in a service business, is making sure that you help encourage those spatial distancing requirements or the facial mask requirements or any of the other hand sanitizing requirements and expirations and aspirations that we have. That's the difficult part.
All right, good deal. Brianna, did you want to add anything?
Yes, from obviously the short-term vacation rental standpoint, I do have a few mentors and people that I'm mentoring that obviously have the issue of money. How do you balance loss of revenue from the short-term vacation rental standpoint? A few properties, without guests staying in those properties, you're subject of foreclosure, and really getting hosts to understand safety is paramount. That's what's most important. You definitely do not want someone to get ill, and the litigation that can be presented if you're not following best practices and opting to operate in an income producing model, not a safety model. And we all love what we do, but certainly none of us are volunteering and truly emphasizing those safety requirements. The advice that I've given, those people is to communicate and reach outside of the STVR guidance and talk to mortgage companies. What options do you have in order to not lose access or ownership of those properties in a short-term vacation rental capacity, so that you can operate safely and not have that pressure of losing ownership of that space during this process.
All right, good deal. My next question is really sort of directed to all of you. But what are the precautions that you're taking for both employees and, or in Brianna's case, short-term vacation rental operators, but also guests that may have pre-existing medical conditions or chronic medical issues that may put them more at risk of developing serious illness if they contract COVID-19? And are you all making any sort of special accommodations for either employees or guests that fit that criteria? David, I'll start with you, and then we'll go on.
Sure. On an employee basis, because we know them, we do everything we can to accommodate their needs in order to provide a safe environment. On the consumer side, as the guests check in, we have no knowledge of any of their needs or health, and we don't want to violate any HIPAA laws. So we really don't know. If they ask for accommodations, like anyone would ask for special accommodations in our hotel, we'll do absolutely everything in our power to service the guests. So, we are highly cognizant of what we are as a service provider, and we'll do everything in our power to keep them as safe as possible, whether it's on a floor that's not occupied or whatever that case may be. It's really a one-on-one situation. So yeah, we're in hospitality to take care and protect our guests and employees.
All right, very good. Brianna, did you want to add anything?
So I think what we've done thus far, truly, if you use guests and staff with pre-existing medical conditions as the baseline for the services that you provide, you don't necessarily have to make those accommodations. I think with the additional sanitizing and spacing requirements and allowing those guests to make an informed choice whether they want to accept those accommodations on the front end, I think that we've done all that we can do, and certainly we're open to more dialogue of of additional resources and accommodations. But truly with this pandemic, those additional sanitizing and accommodations are truly the baseline now. So I think that is a positive resource, but truly informed, making sure that staff, I guess, knows what you're able to accommodate and not over promising. I've read some information on popular short-term vacation rental sites that say we're hospital sanitized. How? Be sure that you're honoring, your verbiage, and you're able to accommodate the things that you say you are. But in terms of that baseline, I think that's where we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll just chime in there right quick. And from our perspective, we're just still encouraging those folks that are at high risk or pre-existing conditions to stay at home and limit travel. Just because businesses are opening back up and you're a high risk or in that group, the official guidance is still limit your travel and to reduce your exposure chances. So that's still the guidance from the state.
And so, Dennis, as a follow-up to that, is there any guidance that you can provide in terms of how hotels or Airbnb or short-term vacation rental operators, what some of their procedures should be if they have a guest that is showing symptoms, or if they have a guest that that actually comes out and says, "Hey, I just found out that I'm positive for COVID-19." Any guidance on what should happen next?
Yeah, if you look at the guidelines in lodging and hospitality, there are protocols there. So if a guest has tested positive and has stayed in a room, there is a shutdown period on that room, and that room is out of service. And there are cleaning protocols and so forth. So the guidelines that you can print off at tnpledge.com gets you down into the protocols of that. But there's definitely that room is taken offline for a period of time, disinfecting, cleaning process, procedure with the proper CDC, all the guidelines that are there, and take that offline. Then contact tracing, notify the shift workers that were working that night when that person was there. And there are protections. If someone has to quarantine themselves, let's say an employee was exposed and they have to self-quarantine for 14 days, there are protections out there in the federal guidelines, the federal acts that have been passed. That employee still receives pay. So I don't want someone thinking they have to work, they were exposed, I won't receive pay. I don't have it right here in front of me, but message me if you need that information. But that person, if they're in self-quarantine, there are paycheck protections and payment protection plans for that employee.
All right, very good. And David, did you have anything to add in terms of kind of what you all have worked out in terms of your procedure in case a guest notifies you that they have tested positive for COVID-19?
Again, I think, same as Dennis mentioned, we're following all the hospitality protocols that have been published. There is a 24-hour quarantine on the room. We have procedures in place on how to remove and secure and isolate all the touch points, the towels, the linens, and so forth. So we have protocols in place in the hospitality space to manage through in the event that does happen.
All right, good deal. And then my last question is, obviously with the severity and with the risk of COVID-19, and I know that in the hotel industry, as David mentioned, you all have been cleaning forever. Have disinfectants or the use of certain types of disinfectants, has that changed at all, or is it the same, but maybe just being done more frequently?
Yeah, I'll take that. It has changed. I think what we have done through this process, really driven by our brands, they've increased, or they've given better specifications for more hospital grade through our providers, Ecolab, Procter & Gamble. They have a higher or stronger sanitation protocols that we're now using. I don't think those will change going forward, to be honest with you. I think we will continue to look for and innovate and create better or the usage of better product as we go forward. And I think those will get better the more testing and utilization that takes place to understand its impact on surfaces, because we also have to understand we have a multitude of surfaces that we're cleaning with a product. So, you can't use one product on cloth that you can use on laminate or wood or marble. So we're looking at all those surfaces and looking at ways of innovating that. Our brands and our purveyors are doing the same thing, and they're helping us comply at a higher level than historical. So, and I don't think they'll go away. We will continue on that trajectory.
Good deal. And Brianna, did you have anything that you wanted to add in terms of the use of sanitizers or the use of disinfectants in short-term vacation rental operations?
Because they're typically single-owned residents for short-term vacation rentals, I've seen a slew of products being used. One thing that I've seen, and I recommend again, is recommending that guests clean up after themselves. You certainly don't want animals or small children getting cleaning supplies. So from a short-term vacation rental standpoint, sometimes, we get a little more lax with accessibility to cleaning supplies. And we're looking at points that encourage people to stay in your STVR when those recommendations should not be accessibility to those cleaning supplies. So if you're using sanitizers that are being made, just know that alcohol concentration, most sanitizers are between 60 and 95%. There are certain percentages of alcohol concentration that's required or recommended by the CDC, so it's important to know that percentage. But to be sure, from the STVR standpoint, not to get lax in terms of accessibility to household products and sanitizers, because you do pose the risk of children, animals, or anyone digesting and having access to those items. So it's a little bit different from my side of things.
Good deal. Dennis, did you have anything that you wanted to add on that point?
Not really on that point. I just have one point to throw in. Hotel occupancy statewide right now is showing 36.7% according to the latest research. And there's some questions about that data. We know some hotel operators have closed down completely. So is it 36.7 or questions on the data? But at one point in time, we were down into single digits on this particular read, and now we're back up to 36.7. So any normal average given day, we're running about 60% statewide. So when you look at our normals, we're still a hair above 50% of our normal. So there is some consumer confidence coming back, and we just expect it to step up. When you look at unemployment right now, it's around 14.7% statewide. Hospitality and lodging is much harder. Sevierville, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge is the highest in the state, 29.7% as of yesterday. So when you look at the numbers around the hospitality, it's going to be a long, slow road to recovery. And all of these things that you guys as operators are mentioning are going to give consumer confidence to get back into traveling, but we have to do it well and have to monitor those things. But just wanted to add those comments, not specifically to your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we appreciate that. I don't think that I have any additional questions for our panel. I was checking to see if we had any questions from some of our webinar viewers today. If you do have questions, please be sure to add them to the chat in the Zoom platform here so that we could pose some of those questions to our panelists. Let's see here. Brooke, do we have any questions at this point?
I do not see any questions.
Well, it looks like we have a request for introductions one more time. So let's see here. Brianna, do you mind introducing yourself once again?
Absolutely. I'm Brianna Garza. I am a short-term vacation rental owner and operator, and I also teach a course on STVR compliance.
All right, David?
David Martin, Vision Hospitality here in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
And Dennis?
I'm Dennis Tumlin. I'm the Chief Customer Officer for the Tennessee Department of Tourist Development in Nashville, and I focus on the top 5 tourism markets and the top 20 attractions.
All right, very good. Very good. Thank you, guys. Brooke, did you have a question that popped up?
Yes, I think Brianna and David touched on this a little bit, but you know, an argumentative guest that's unwilling to wear a mask in your areas. Do you want to expand on that a little bit more?
I'll take this. I'll go first. That's okay, David.
Sure.
So what I discussed earlier is that, again, the two most popular STVR platforms have extenuating circumstances, and one of the extenuating circumstances is to discontinue lodging services, and to emphasize that would be the last option, and to really push education and really use that as a learning opportunity. What information was provided to that guest prior to them coming to the short-term vacation rental? What were those expectations communicated thoroughly and clearly? I think being concise and making sure that the guest is making an informed choice whether they want your accommodations is important. But to your point, if there is a guest that is simply refusing to operate safely, it's a little bit easier from an STVR standpoint because there's not a lot of additional exposure that can happen. But there is that opportunity to DC lodging. But my conflict resolution process would be to communicate, you know, the importance of those safety precautions and to provide those resources in writing and to really vet those recommendations, as there's a lot of information out there. You know, that's why I am a huge proponent of the Tennessee Pledge, because it does have CDC and OSHA vetted information within it.
Yeah, and just to follow up, I agree with Brianna on that. We're in the hospitality space. We are more educating and encouraging. I mean, if I have an unruly guest in any situation that is creating harm, then we'll manage through that process. But in this case, out of the 6 states that we represent and the 37 hotels, we haven't encountered yet, and I'm hoping not to, find a guest that's unruly in relative to that. It seems that our consumers are understanding and wanting to feel safe and secure, and not the opposite of that. So I'm sure it will happen, but hasn't experienced it yet, and I hope we don't.
I would just add that I would view that as situational.
Yep.
If it's a guest that's not endangering anyone, they're in an open space, maybe that open space is a huge lobby and there's no one else in there with that guest. The Tennessee Pledge guidelines, there's not a law there. It's recommendations, it's suggestions. It's not an enforceable law. Now, if a guest is intentionally trying to harm other guests, I think it's very situational on that question. And I would monitor each situation specific of whether they're harming employees or other guests, or if they're minding their own business, not being, but your question was argumentative and unruly. So I would as situational specific as you would any other guest if they were intoxicated or any other situation that you may have to handle. But again, the wearing a face mask is not a state law. It is a guideline and it is not a law.
All right, good deal.
I don't think we have any other questions. Before we wrap up, I do just want to remind everyone that this was recorded and we will put it on our website. So this will be available to everyone to share. If someone missed it or wants to see it again, it will be available. So we'll send that out to all of you probably Monday.
All right, thank you so much. I want to give a big shout out to our friends and partners over at the Chattanooga Tourism Company for helping us to make this happen. So big thank you to Candace Litchfield and Steph Hayes and Brian Murphy for helping us to put this panel together. You guys were great and super informative this afternoon. And we would not have been able to find you had it not been for the Chattanooga Tourism Company. And so the Chattanooga Tourism Company has also done some great webinars, especially around the reopening and restarting of restaurants. So I encourage you to watch those webinars as well. And they've really helped us in terms of our preparation for our webinars. And then I want to thank our panelists, of course. So big thank you to Brianna and David and Dennis. You guys have been great, and you've provided a lot of information for people to digest today. So thank you for coming out and joining us today. And then I want to thank our webinar viewers for tuning in and for taking an hour out of your day to tune in to listen to us talk. It's been great. And then, the last thing that I want to just sort of close with is all of these folks, Brianna, David, and Dennis, have really talked a lot about the safety measures that they're going to take, that they're putting in place within their respective organizations and operations. And so if you are an STVR operator, or if you operate a small, maybe a family-owned hotel, and you feel like you have questions, or you're really sort of perplexed about how to operate safely, then you could think very, very carefully about the safety measures that you're putting in place and whether or not you should be in operation, because none of us wants to be linked to the spread of COVID-19. And so please, 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 this webinar is going to be recorded. So if you are in that space and you're trying to, figure out things for your own operation, watch the webinar again if you feel like it's going to help you, because we want to be a resource. And please feel free to email myself or Brooke, and we would be happy to connect you with one of these three wonderful individuals that joined us today to provide us all this great information. And if you have industry specific or general questions regarding best practices, we're also going to make sure that we get you connected with the Hamilton County Department of Health. Bonnie Deacons is the Director of Environmental Health for the County Health Department. And so she can provide information as well, and we can make sure to share her information with you. And yep, you see it right up there on the screen. This has been, we've had several webinars at this point that we've hosted from the city. And so this webinar and every other webinar that we've done are is on our website. So you can go back and review all of those webinars. Dennis talked a little bit about childcare facilities. We did a childcare facility webinar a couple of weeks ago. And so we've got a lot of good information out there for you to tune into. And then again, as Dennis mentioned, please, please, please check out the Tennessee Pledge guidelines issued by the governor's office, tnpledge.com. Again, that's tnpledge.com. Please check out those Tennessee Pledge guidelines because it does provide information not only for different businesses and industry types, but there are also guidelines on there for houses of worship. And so with that, I don't think I have anything else except to say thank you, Brooke Satterfield, for being such a wonderful webinar producer as always. I couldn't have done this without you. And thank you again to the panel, Brianna, Dennis, David, you guys were wonderful. And thank you to our friends at the Chattanooga Tourism Company. And thank you to our Webby viewers. See you later.
Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you.